Good morning.
How are you, my friend?
All right, how are you?
Hey, we're hanging in there. God is good all the time.
Amen, amen. How are your glasses?
Well, these are my reading glasses and up close things, so everything seems to be working fine. I don't need them for normal, but you look more handsome when I put them on. So there you go.
Okay.
How was your
Tell me, it's
day?
like it's like quarter to 10 there, right?
Absolutely. Yes. In the morning, AM. Right.
You woke up a few minutes ago at the very least. Did you get a chance to check out the news from Israel? If there is, I wonder how much they're reporting over there, where you get your Israeli news.
Well, I'm not sure which news you're talking about. I understand one of the political uh, people had resigned from her party or from the coalition, at least.
Right.
Is that the
Yes,
news?
that's the news. So here it sounds like, yeah, one person. What can one person already do, you're saying?
So this, I guess, this can be a lesson on what impact can one person make in the world.
That's absolutely right. That's for sure. And all
So
day long they've been talking about it because
so what
for
is
the
it? What
past
is this? What does this mean, from your standpoint?
for the past year, ever since the current government um, was established, again, it's not like the United States where you have one winner, the president wins, and either there's a majority of his party in the Congress and the Senate, or there isn't. If there isn't, then you figure out some way to work. It's not the way it works in a parliamentary democracy like Israel. The smaller parties, all the parties of which there are about a dozen, they figure out who can sit together in a majority coalition, and usually it's the leader of the largest party that gets to call the shots and to be the prime minister. But what happened this time is that they got the leader of the smallest party to be the prime minister, and they had a majority of one.
You see me shaking my head like this, don't you?
It's crazy. It's crazy. You can't. It's hard to imagine. I mean, people who don't understand it, they don't hear it. So, but here it was just crazy, And it would be one thing if they all agreed, but they don't agree on anything. You have
Right.
the far right together with the far furthest left Arabs. Crazy stuff was going on over there. So they were barely able to agree with each other throughout this entire year, and until finally this one parliament member, this one Knesset member, Idit Silman is her name. She just said, "I can't take this anymore," and so she quit the coalition. Now but it's 60-60, so there's this side can't be and that side can't be.
It seems that there's a close mirror of what's going on in the Israeli election system and the American. The only thing that some people could agree with in America was that they hated Donald Trump. Seems like there's some reason that the only thing this coalition could agree with is they hated Benjamin Netanyahu.
That's right.
So if that goes away, they don't have anything that they hate in common. So
that's right. The thing is that I can speak for myself, and I do think that I speak for a majority, or certainly a plurality, that Netanyahu, even though he might have some foibles, he might even be guilty after he's proven guilty. But until he's proven guilty, of course, he's innocent. I think he's innocent. But why get rid of somebody who's I think we've discussed this before. Why get rid of somebody who's a giant just because a whole bunch of microbes, there's a giant, and midgets are saying, no, we don't like him anymore. Mom is shooting yourself in the foot.
I agree with you completely. in our country, people couldn't see past Donald Trump's obvious flaws to his policies. And you should be voting for a person's policies, not them. But when you have the masses who don't take civics courses anymore in high school voting, you don't know what you're going to get. In the early days of America, of course, it was much smaller population and a different core value and of the country.
There was no TikTok back then.
And people were educated in civics, how our government worked. When I was a boy, you started every morning by saying, with prayer, actually in school, prayer. And you stood and gave the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. And everybody loved mom and apple pie. And you loved recess. And school was out and you got home and mom, what are we having for dinner? You know, that was the world I grew up in. So people loved our country. We understood.
That's right.
That it was had a miraculous birth. That even though we were not perfect, we were for the good for the world overall. So it's a different world in America then. And even after even when Peg and I were growing up in the late 40s and early 50s, I've mentioned to her several times. World War II was over in 45. The fathers and husbands came home, those who did. And we didn't have a serious enemy on the world scene. All the guys are coming home and they're rejoining their wives. They're making babies. They got to have a refrigerator. They got to have a house. They got to have a furniture. They got to have a crib for the baby. And it was the biggest boom in the history of the world. And so here me and Peggy raised after World War II, the late 40s and through the 50s, with the greatest nation in the history of the world enjoying the peak of its peace and prosperity. And so for us, we had the blessing, in our opinion at least, of being raised in about a 15-year period that was the greatest time to be raised in all of world history for us. And so we're 80 now. I'll be 80 soon. Peggy just turned 80, but we still live out of that mindset. And somebody said, and there's a lot of truth to it, you live your whole life out of your high school world.
Just one second. What year would you say that this great period started?
I would say 1946 to 1960, right at that period of time.
Now, so in 1946, you were what, 20 years?
The war ended in 45. That's the best.
So how old were you about in 1946?
Well, I was only 3 years. Well, when 1945, I was 3 years old. So it was in the late 40s that I became a young boy, but became, in my teenage years in the 50s.
So you were born around 1940, 41, 42.
42. Peggy was born in December 41.
So by the time 1960 rolled around, you were already 18. So you really grew up your whole childhood and teenhood.
Grew up in the 50s, which was, again, was America's peak of peace and prosperity. And of course, there are always enemies that you don't know about, but on the surface, it was the best time that a human being could live as a child, a young person, a teenager, in all of world history that we know about. Because we were born in the superpower. We had no enemies, a real threat. We had peace and prosperity, the biggest boom in the history of the world,
Yes.
And you went to class, you cheered for your team, and you went to the Dairy Queen and had a hamburger, and life was good. we didn't people didn't have to be a Christian, using our words,
Yes.
to be a good person, because now people who aren't Americans may take issue with everything I'm saying, and that's fine. That won't bother me. But there was an innocence about America that it doesn't have today. I hitchhiked as a boy. I hitchhiked all over town. No one ever thought about it was being something maybe you shouldn't do. We didn't have air conditioning, so we slept with our windows open, our head in the windowsill, trying to get a little breeze somewhere. You didn't lock your car. You kept your keys in the ignition. You didn't even lock your door. You played outside down the street with your neighbors. Your parents were never concerned about you. If you misbehaved, the neighbors' parents knew they had the right to send you home. And that was terrible if that happened, because your parents were waiting for you, And people lived by a moral core from the Bible, whether they were Christian people or not. It was just, this is what held the nation together. And that's why all of these things together, in our opinion, made that the greatest time for a young person to grow up ever. So
Yes.
we have a hard time, people my age have a hard time understanding the world we live in today. So we're just trying to cope.
Well, I'll tell you, I did not grow up in the same time that you did. I grew up about 20 years later. I think that my growing up as a child, I had a pretty good time. There were these fallout shelter logos on buildings in my neighborhood where I grew up, but I never participated in a fallout shelter exercise.
Right, I understand.
And we had fire drills, but not the atomic bomb drills or anything like that. So, and I didn't have an air conditioner in my room. My parents had a small air conditioner in their room, like after a few years. And we had a fan that if I would get real hot, then I would stand next to the fan. That was it. And then by the beginning of high school, I moved to Israel, and then Bechlal, I was living in the paradise. And today the world is crazy, but I'm enjoying myself a lot. I think it's fine.
Oh, I'm enjoying life with my precious bride, and with doing what God called me to do, and it's just and
I don't know, you quoted what is conventional wisdom, that the 50s was the peak of prosperity, the big boom, as you said. I'm no economist, but I think that the graphs of our period are also pretty booming. I don't know that the biggest, if you would buy stock, if we call stock a measure of prosperity, if you would buy stock in some year and then sell it 15 years later, so I don't know that 46 to 60, you would make the most money. I don't know. I don't know. So I think that nowadays we're having tremendous prosperity also. How much of that is a bubble? How much of that is meaningless if you don't have significance in your life, in your own personal life? And there's no question about that at all.
Well, I just finished a study on Ecclesiastes, and
Oh,
that's what that book is about. Life,
that's right.
you can have every dollar in the world, every shekel in the world, every pleasure in the world, but if you don't have a connection with your creator and discovered his purpose for your life, it's all vanity, it's all empty, it's all vain. You have no purpose. And this is one of the things that distress me in my time of being a minister, almost 50 years, is to realize that the great majority of people, including Christians, don't know their purpose in life. They don't know why they're here, why God let them be born, what they're supposed to be doing. They're working, they're having children, they're taking them to school, they're paying the bills, and trying to get along with their spouse and keep the kids out of trouble. And that is life for most people. And I've always been burdened that they can't get past that to see that God can add to that, to everyday life, and make it more meaningful for them.
Yes.
So I've been one of the fortunate few in the world to discover my purpose, and have a precious wife who has come alongside and supported that all these years.
Yes.
And I just always wanted that for other people too, like
That's
you
great.
or anybody. Find your purpose.
That's
And
right.
let me help you fulfill it if I can.
That is definitely beautiful. That is definitely beautiful.
So we would travel. We traveled in ministry for 15 years to churches all over the country, 2 or 3 weeks out of the month, 12 months out of the year. That's a lot.
I'm sorry?
2 or 3 weeks out of the month, 12 months out of the year for 15 years.
Did you live in a caravan in a what are those things called?
No, you'd fly to the location and stay there and go to the next one, and then fly back home a couple of weeks later or whatever.
So for 15 years, you pretty much lived out of a suitcase.
Oh yeah, we would come home just long enough to put the underwear in the washing machine and go back and get on the plane. It's a wonderful
Wow.
life. We were younger, of course, a lot younger, but we would usually stay. Church life was different then than it is today. Again, everything has changed, but we would stay at a church like from Sunday to Wednesday teaching. So you're there most of the week with the people, you get to know them. And we would always ask them along the way, in context with what we were doing there. I would call it your God thing. How many of you know your God thing? What is your purpose? What is your vision? What is your purpose? What's he put in your heart to do? And
That's how you would begin your talks?
No, that's along the way after you get to know people. You ask those kind of questions,
Okay.
And I would say, without exception, only maybe 10% of the people would stand and say they knew what their purpose in life was beyond, just living. And
Those people, were they all Christians, or did some of them say, I know my purpose even without faith?
No, these are in church services,
Uh-huh. So they knew they knew the script.
Well, they knew their Christian relationship with Jesus, but they had trouble somehow. Nobody discipled and mentored them and coached them to help them find what that might mean for their life, to give bigger meaning and purpose to just existing. And this has always been a burden to me, because
Yes.
I found mine and I want everybody else to find theirs, anyway, so maybe this lady who resigned from the government will find hers.
The cynics amongst the political reporters and analysts say that she's going to go from one of the backbencher in the smallest party to a minister in the biggest party.
Probably be a rising star with the Likud now.
That's a possibility. Well, we'll see. It ain't easy. Nobody promises you a rose garden in politics.
Well, there used to be a popular song about that in America.
That's right.
Yeah.
I remember that also. When I was growing up in Queens in New York, we'd go to the kosher pizza place. And there was a poster there about Israel produced by the Israeli public relations ministry or whatever it was. Israel, we never promised you a rose garden. I wonder who came up with that. Like, who wants to buy something if that's the way that you say what I don't promise you? So what really was promised? Why did I come to Israel? What did I feel was promised to me in Israel? I think what I felt was promised, and that promise was fulfilled, was a challenge, a personal challenge, to live in exciting times, in an exciting place with exciting people and society that is challenging and risky even. We're not sure that this is going to work. Basically, the whole country was one big entrepreneurial effort. So everybody felt that it all depends on me. Even though I was only 14, 15, I felt I got to do something.
Very good.
And that's the way it's been, and that's the way it still is.
One of our dear friends of blessed memory, Benny Alone, of course, you know Benny, knew him well. We had him here in Houston, and he spoke around the U.S. And we had a good relationship, personal relationship with Benny, but he became the minister of tourism.
That's right.
Of course, we were bringing groups to Israel for Sukkot for 30 years, so we knew him pretty well in that way. Again, we brought him to Houston. We brought the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus, Joshua Einstein and others to Houston for a big Celebrate Israel event. But Benny, he along the way, when he was being involved in the discussions about promoting Israel, and the secular mind was, well, tell them about how wonderful the beaches are at Tel Aviv. Well, why would anybody care about that? We got these right here in Florida,
or wherever.
And anywhere. So Benny, rightly so, said, what do we have
that nobody else has?
That nobody else has, and that you can come walk in the footsteps of Jesus. Well, hallelujah. Where do I sign up? You can come see the holy sites. This is what we have to offer. And of course, after that, the tourism boomed far beyond what it was. And we always appreciated that about him, that he wrote a book, and I have a copy of it here somewhere. He gave to me and signed it for me, about the altars of God or something. I don't remember the name of it. It's a very good book.
Yes.
But anyway, so Israel is the Holy Land. There's no other Holy Land. And right. So why wouldn't you market using crass words, I guess, or promote yourself that you have that's unique that no other place has? And, like I said, Peggy and I led tours for 30 years That's
Yes.
a lot of frequent flyer miles. That's a lot of long hours sitting in a uncomfortable seat on the plane. There's a lot of people you're taking. And, I don't know how many people that is, 30 years, but everybody had the same thought.
Yes.
You don't have to be circumcised to be a Zionist.
Oh my. Okay.
And if God has put that in your heart, not in your flesh, but in your heart, they all had the same mindset.
Beautiful.
I'm getting emotional because I visualized when the plane landed at Ben Gurion and they stepped off the plane, they all had the same thought. I'm home. That might be hard for a Jewish person to grasp, so the Christian would think like that, but this is the adopted home, we will say
Exactly.
that, for Christian people.
I
And
understand
many
that.
of them cried all the way back, coming back to America. They hated to leave so bad.
Wow.
So we had the great honor of helping them have that experience for all those years.
How many trips did you take a year? One or more than one?
Well, normally we just took them to Sukkot because we wanted them to have that experience.
Once a year.
But several times we would go several times. I went 3 times back to back one year myself.
Wow.
That was really hard, taking people for different reasons.
Laundry, the underwear was barely dry and you're already back on the plane.
Well, we have an interesting underwear story about Israel. If you have a minute to hear it, I think your viewers would enjoy it. When travel was a little easier, put it that way, we always had people on our tours bring something for humanitarian aid or different places around the country. It was much easier to do in those days. So usually somebody would have their suitcase with their things in it, and then they would bring an extra suitcase with other items to give to help people. Gotcha. And so one year, I said, God, what do you want us to bring this year for people? I heard the word underwear. What? Wait a minute. That can't be God. That's got to be the devil. What are you talking about? Underwear? What do you mean underwear? I can't be bringing underwear to people. I'm a Bible teacher, I write books and I'm speaking at the feast. What do you mean bring underwear? This is kind of humiliating, underwear. So then these words, however people, I would say God told me, but
Yes.
People say it different ways, These words came to me. Well, nobody likes to wear used underwear. Bring them some underwear. So, okay. So, we maybe had 100 people with us or whatever. I don't remember, 70, whatever it was. So we explained this is what we're going to be doing. Of course, this is before the internet, so you have to phone everybody and send letters and all this stuff. And so people, they had suitcases full of underwear.
Wow.
They, like one person called up Walmart or someplace like that and told them what they were doing, and they gave them a big discount for packages of underwear, all brand new store bought in the packages, of course.
Yeah.
So we get over there. We have
70 suitcases of underwear.
Thousands of underwear, thousands, One person might have several hundred in their suitcase.
Right.
10 in a package and 10 packages or something. So we're going to present all of this to one of our Christian organizations there in Jerusalem to give out where it was needed. And so we have this presentation at the Hyatt there on Mount Scopus, and incidentally, we opened the Hyatt in 97. They didn't even have their phones connected. So we're making this presentation in the dining hall there at the Hyatt. And I'm people are bringing all these suitcases, and the organization we're presenting this to, they didn't grasp how much we had. So they weren't prepared. So they had to go get all of the things that the Hyatt has that you carry the luggage on, they had to bring all those down to the dining hall. And you can imagine all these people are in the dining hall, right? At the Hyatt, it's dinner time. They're watching all this stuff. And they're trying to figure out what is this crazy man doing over there, And so when they finally realized what was going on and they saw the magnitude of it, they all stood and applauded. And
Wow.
It was said that we were, are you ready, undergirding the entire Soviet exodus. So somebody around there is wearing our underwear today, I guess.
So this day, there might still be plenty of them that are still in the original packaging.
Undergirding the entire Soviet exodus. So that obviously was in the 90s,
I hear you.
Yeah, right.
Listen, we've got to cut a little short today because I have another meeting and then I have to go to the evening prayer. So let me first say